up is Michael Harrison, the publisher of Talkers Magazine. He is really the leader in the radio, analyst in the radio industry right now in the United States of America, in a media industry that is in amazing change and flux. Michael, thanks so much for Skyping in today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Josh. Congratulations on the segment before. Fascinating conversations.
Yeah, it's this ability to connect people around the world instantaneously is transforming everything. And as I said the last time I was on your program, it's really fun to do this because you're so much on the cutting edge, and it's happening. I bet it's even happening faster than you expected, although it's a lot of work every day. It is, yes, there's no rest, but it is literally exhilarating every day. And for me, not so much for the regular hosts who are on a regular basis, who are all very smart. For me, to be able to hang around and talk with smart people is a lot of fun, and yourself included. Let's talk radio. Let's go national first. We've had these conversations, I think, over the past couple of years. Let's start with, I think, everybody's watch list company, Cumulus Media. They're on the D list at NASDAQ. The stock's trading at around 36 cents. Where are they and where do they go?
Well, they can only go up, hopefully, for them and for all the hundreds of people that work for Cumulus and all the thousands and millions of people that listen to their programming. So, we're wishing them the best. They are in the 30-cent range. They came down from a buck, a few more than that, and it's been a very rough ride. However, their CEO, Mary Berner, has really changed the culture of the company. And she's a very, very dynamic CEO. She has a tremendous media background, not exactly radio, but she knows the ropes when it comes to companies in distress. And she's changed the culture of the company, which was considered by many to be toxic. That's the word we heard around the business, toxic. And now the employees are happy. They've stopped the bleeding in terms of just the atmosphere, the morale there. And hopefully they'll be able to figure out some kind of a plan with their investors, which is obviously where they're focused most of their attention right now. And create a situation whereby they cut their losses, focus on their gains, and ride the very, very rough waters of this industry right now. They're not alone. They're not the only one having trouble. It's not like the company isn't doing well. Everybody's having problems, so their problems are, to a certain extent, understandable.
She's put up a tremendous fight. She had obviously done the reorganization. I believe it was a bankruptcy and reorganization at Reader's Digest, I think, if my memory. And I think most people thought they would be in a bankruptcy by now. Probably a year ago, I think the predictions were flying. But she has stayed that off. Last quarter's financials was probably the first. She had some good side numbers and some downside numbers. Revenue was pretty flat, but EBITDA, I think, was up. Can she stay off a D list from NASDAQ, which would be, I think, crippling to the stock if you go to the OTCBB and you become a penny stock? Can she hold it together and get revenue up while she continues the reinvention of that company?
Well, that's the $1 million or $1 billion.
Yeah, it's about $1 billion. They're about $1 billion in revenue.
Now, if I were to say to you, oh, sure she can. I mean, where did I get that information? I don't think anybody could answer that question other than to say, if anyone can do it, Mary Berner is probably the right person. It still doesn't say whether or not her job is impossible. But if it can be done, she can do it. Nobody wants them to fail. This is a situation where the rules are being bent. That's one of the reasons they're not in bankruptcy, and it's one of the reasons iHeart is not in bankruptcy yet, is that nobody wants these companies to fail. And it's a matter of a lot of conversations are taking place behind closed doors. Unfortunately, I'm not behind those closed doors, so I can't bring you firsthand information. My own personal feeling is that they will somehow pull through this and figure out not only how to avoid bankruptcy, going off the D list, becoming a penny stock, and basically be destroyed, they will somehow figure out a way to avoid that and then realign the company, something that all media has to do at this point in history, to be able to operate a meaningful, productive company in this new media and cultural environment, which is now changing daily.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about iHeart, both just as I think you know so well, you know almost every market in the country. In the Providence DMA, Cumulus is the largest market share. I think it's around 45%. iHeart has about 30% of the market. So the two of them are really control the market on the radio side. iHeart's got the most debt. It's north of $30 billion. Folks have been forced to trade. I think institutional investors have been pounded down pretty far. They too are at about $1, I think a little above $1 right now. What's the prognosis for them right now?
They're a big mystery. It's amazing to observers that even exist at this point.
Yeah.
And you know the old expression, kicking the can down the road?
Yeah.
Well, they should be in the NFL kicking field goals. They really have proven to be great artists at that. Bob Pittman is the CEO, and he's under a tremendous amount of pressure, tremendous amount of fire. And it's really at this point a matter of who's going to control the company, the investors, the lenders, or the current people who are running the ship. It is amazing. It's one of the wonders of the world in the financial scene that this company is still able to operate. And again, you know, the expression, they're too big to fail. Look at all the employees, look at all the stations, look at the market share of radio in general. When you think about iHeart, you think of Cumulus, and you see the situation in Providence, well, that's basically an example of the way it is all across the country. In most of the major markets and in most of the major parts of the country, they control this institution that we call radio.
Right.
So there's a lot at stake here.
Bob Pittman, of course, you referenced the CEO of iHeart, formerly the head of MTV, and really built MTV into a power. But I just wanted to go to one point. When we first started, we had a partnership with Fareed Sulman, and they had just come out of their first bankruptcy at Citadel. Citadel, of course, is now part of Cumulus. And Fareed's play when they went into bankruptcy was, okay, here, take the keys. And the banks and the institutional investors, the last thing they wanted to do was be a radio operator. Is that a little bit of the ploy that Bob Pittman's playing right now with Bain Capital and the other institutional investors, of being able to say, hey, listen, if you knock me out, then you can run these stations?
I personally think that, right, I think that possibly is the scenario, and I don't know for sure, and I want to be very careful what I say here because a lot of this is speculative. But yeah, I don't see people, frothing at the mouth to take control of these companies. Radio is not as glamorous and as attractive a business as it used to be, and if these top people, Dickey brothers, Bob Pittman, right, Merrick Berner, the people that are running these companies who are seasoned media people are not able to easily, effectively deal with the turbulent industry. How are bean counters going to do it? So it is not something that they want to do. They don't want to take over, not at all. They want to see professionals be able to run it and bring it back into some type of a healthy position.
We've talked a lot about nationally, which both those big radio groups have huge implications here in this market. Let's go to, I think, one of the most dynamic things that has happened is the sale of WBRU, one of the top college radio stations in the country, and much more than a college radio station. Very dynamic alternative rock portfolio that was, a top radio station in America for a number of years. Not only does it close up, it gets sold to K-Love, a Christian broadcasting group brand. What's the implication of that? Was that a message to all of radio that independent, even high-quality independent radio just doesn't have a place anymore?
Well, that's also why consolidation is not such a terrible thing, because radio might not even be here today if it weren't for consolidation.
Right.
Independent radio is very difficult to operate. This station in Providence is an emotional heritage radio station. People look at it with a lot of feeling and emotion and nostalgia. But the truth of the matter is, it was a business decision that Brown has made, and really to serve the student population. Most of the people of that age group live online. And it is so much more effective and efficient. Look at your company to operate online than to operate a license and a transmitter and a signal and all of these things, which eventually are going to be obsolete.
Yeah.
We're headed to that. We're not there yet. But for an institution such as Brown to operate a big FM radio station, when you have your primary mission is to serve the students, to teach them radio, to teach them communications. The money that they're getting from this deal applied to the educational process, to all of the channels for music and alternative rock and talk and news and all the things that they're going to be able to do will be so much better spent by going online and keeping WBRU alive in that on that platform. I think it was a very smart move. I wouldn't recommend it to every college and university out there to sell their stick, but the fact of the matter is they put a lot of heart into this thought. They didn't just do it mindlessly or out of greed, and I think they have the student body and the young audience of that radio station's interests in mind. I think it's a painful move, emotionally uncomfortable move, but looking ahead to the future, a very smart one.
What do you see for talk radio? Here for many years, Providence was as robust a talk radio market, and it's still strong. But you had two titans leave the market, in Buddy Cianci's passing and John DePietro leaving. Are there cities in the country? I know Milwaukee's a big talk market. Will there be a flow back towards talk radio, political talk radio in mid-sized markets like Providence and others?
I think as long as there's radio, talk is going to be the major format. Music radio has a much tougher road ahead than talk radio. And as evidenced by the amount of dynamism being generated in the public sector from Washington and Donald Trump and politics not only as a vital subject of interest to the American people, but also politics as a very, very robust spectator sport. I think there will, as long as there's radio, there will always be talk radio. If radio were to die, hypothetically over the next 10, 15, 20 years, talk shows, news, audio journalism, multimedia journalism will live. Yeah. And it'll just come out of your smartphone, it'll come out of your refrigerator. I see talk radio as always existing in some form, some media form, looking ahead into the infinite future.
Do you see any in the talk radio format world? Is anybody doing anything dramatically new? I mean, we saw that period of some of the national syndicated shows that got edgier and edgier, and some of them became more multimedia, of course. Do you see any new trends coming along that people should take a look at, especially in mid-sized markets?
I wish I could say yes, but for the most part, radio programming has not really done much new in a long time. And the main reason for that has been the higher-ups, the captains of industry have been obsessed minute to minute, all day, all night, with dealing with debt management, yeah, and not with creativity. So I'm one of the leading boosters of radio in the country. I love radio and I believe in its future. And I think that radio as it exists today, particularly talk radio, still is a vital component of the American marketplace of ideas. But I am sad to say there's not a lot of innovation or new formats that are so potentially waiting to go. There are so many vacuums out there that are not being filled. And I hope in the next year or two, talk radio and radio comes around to filling all of these different formats, which I personally believe will be intrinsic to its revitalization and having a healthy future, if it is to have one at all.
The relationship between music and radio, for 50 plus years, 50, 60 years, it was so critical, radio, and especially local radio, for emerging musicians to be able to break through and get local playtime and come in studio and do an acoustic set or whatever it might be. With the iHeart model, using that as an example, is that relationship now broken, or could we ever see it revert back? I mean, if you listen to a top 40 radio station in Providence, it's the same playlist as Albuquerque or Santa Fe.
The whole music culture is going through changes, and this has affected radio. I mean, record companies are not what they used to be. Recording artists can't make a living. They have to sell their records in the back of their trunk at concerts. Can't even make money selling concert tickets. You have to sell t-shirts.
Yeah.
So the whole music field, and there is an argument to be made, and I want to say this very carefully, because I am not an old fogey. I may be old, but I'm not a fogey. I still believe in the future, and I love music. My background is music radio, even though the last couple of decades have been mostly in talk in terms of my day-to-day operations. I'll tell you, the music culture today is not what it used to be in terms of the impact on society. Young people today are more interested in computers, they're more interested in social media, they're more interested in making their own movies and running their own media than they are necessarily in hearing the latest Bob Dylan record, or if there were a group like the Beatles or something of that nature. So this is more than radio's problem. But again, I'm sad to say that radio has basically shot itself in the foot over years and years and years of tightening playlists, very, very long commercial breaks that make it very difficult to listen to the music, and not playing innovative music that's programmed by people who have a feeling for the street. People in suits on the top of corporate towers have never been known to be able to create innovative art or media. And in its heyday with music radio was run by characters that loved the music and were really fans of it,
right,
and had relationships with the record companies and the artists that were so close and so connected. So I'm very, very pessimistic about the future of radio and music. I'm not pessimistic about the future of music because it comes from the human DNA and the human soul, and it will be revitalized. I'm just sorry to say that radio has not done anything to put itself in a position to meet that juncture when it happens, when music comes back, and it'll probably be a combination of online media where people will get their music.
So you're telling me that since the Dickey brothers left Cumulus, they are not running a hip-hop venue down there in Atlanta. Is that correct?
I don't know if they're having a big party there. Seriously, though, there is a lot of talk about Lou Dickey coming back, starting a new company.
Right, he's raised a bunch of capital, $200 million in commitments, I believe.
Has a blank check for a limited amount of money that could be seed money to get something going. Look, for all the bad things that they say about the Dickey brothers and the toxic environment and all that, they are not bad people, and they are not stupid men. They just were on the wrong side of history with perhaps some of the wrong ways of doing things, but they didn't do it because they thought that this is going to destroy radio. They did what they thought was right. They're very smart. Lou Dickey is an excellent businessman. He understands the investment end of things, the Wall Street end of things. Both Lou and John love radio. It just didn't work out for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if Lou Dickey makes a comeback.
Last question. Out on the West Coast, Alpha Broadcasting tried to kind of bring back live and local, both in music and in talk. They've trimmed back that commitment to that type of content. Was that kind of the final straw? Listen, if they couldn't do it, nobody can?
They were on their way to doing it. Larry Wilson, who started Alpha after being retired for a number of years, right, with lots of money that he made back in the Citadel spinoff.
Yep.
He's the guy that walked away with all the loot. He came back with the live and local and carefully selected properties and came back into the business and was gangbusters until the environment began to change after 2008. and he made a purchase of a group of stations by a company called Digity
Right.
for a couple $100 million, I believe. And since that deal, he has been faced with enormous debt, cash flow problems, and he's had to cut back. He had very good intentions, was on his way to doing it. I don't know why he made that deal, and I don't know how he's going to recover.
They were in Portland, Oregon, and they had it all going. And I'll tell you, it was like a throwback to the 80s. They had concerts going. They had very creative things cooking along. And then, made the big expansion and took the hit. Listen, Michael, your huge insight into what's going on in media. We always appreciate it when we get to have conversations with you, and hope we can do this on a more regular basis, because I do think you're probably the smartest guy. You talk to everybody, and you're the smartest guy, and also a fair broker in your analysis of what's going on in the radio industry.
That's very kind of you, and I'm a fan of your platform, so it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks so much.